Hi everyone. It's another make day, so I thought I would continue our beginner cheese making series. And the video that I've been asked to make the most is about cultures, the different cultures, and what they do. I'm going to tackle this, but it's probably going to take a few videos, so I hope that's okay with everyone. Where I want to start is what a starter culture is, what it does, and what it doesn't do. So most people think that cheese cultures just convert lactose or milk sugar into lactic acid. And that's, while they do that, it's just a part of the story and not even the biggest part. So the cheese cultures influence our cheese, our final cheese, in three distinct ways. The first one is acidification. The second one is enzyme activity while the bacteria is alive. And the third one is enzyme activity while that bacteria is dead. So a common misconception about cheese is that, and I'm talking about semi-hard cheeses here where most beginners start, is that the cheese keeps getting more acidic as it ages. And that sharp flavor in aged cheese comes from this continued acidification. So the more acid it gets, the sharper your cheese gets. And a better explanation for that is that most acidification happens early, and later sharpness and complexity comes much more from the breakdowns of proteins and fats in the cheese, and we'll get into how that happens. Aging is mostly about ripening chemistry, not ongoing acid production. So this first stage is acidification. So we're going from milk to a kind of fresh curd, the very beginnings of your cheese and in the press. So the first major job of a culture is acidification. Bacteria metabolizes lactose, like most of us know, the milk sugar, into lactic acid. And so it takes from that really easy to digest sugar that's floating all around them in the milk. It strips what it needs for its own energy and growth, and it discards the rest. And a large portion of that is lactic acid. So when it produces this acid, our pH starts to fall. So if we're looking at landmarks, fresh milk starts about 6.6 pH. Renneting, you're looking at 6.5 or 4 to 6.5. Cutting and cooking, it's dropping now to 6.3. And by the time you're draining and pressing it, we've dropped now to 5.2 to 5.4 pH. So the exact numbers here depend on the style of cheese you're making. So these are just ballpark numbers right now. So this acid accumulation, this pH drop, matters because it helps rennet coagulate properly. It changes how calcium behaves in the network once it does coagulate. It helps that curd contract. In our last video, I talked about the contraction of that curd that forces the whey out. And it affects the final moisture and texture in our cheese in our cave down the road. So it helps determine how the curds form, how much whey leaves the curd, and how firm and moist our final cheese is going to become. After that beginning step, so after our cheese is in the press, so in the first 24 hours, and especially just prior to salting, most of the lactose that the bacteria is using is leaving with the whey. It's either stays in the vat or it's being pushed out of your press from between those curds. There's only a small amount left in the curd, and usually it's eaten by the bacteria really quickly. It's consumed really quickly. Then we add salt, and that inhibits that bacterial activity even more. So the starter bacteria, their metabolism really starts to slow at that point. So cheese does not usually keep acidifying in any major way for months. Most of that acid work happens really early, and it slows and eventually comes to a stop. Now, there's a nuance here because some cheeses, there's all kinds, will still show minor pH changes later, but they're not going to be significant at all. And some will even drift slightly upward. So you'll end up with a more alkaline cheese at cutting time, at eating time, than you do at pressing time. So just keep in mind that the main acidification is early, and it's not an ongoing process in the cheese. Step number 2 is enzyme activity in a young cheese. So now we have bacteria that have eaten all the lactose. There's no sugar around them anymore. And these little guys are not trying to make us cheese. They're trying to stay alive. And that's an important distinction here. In order to stay alive, they kind of shift gears from metabolizing sugars into metabolizing proteins. So they're trapped in the matrix just like everything else. The fat, protein, everything's trapped there. And they are you looking around and they're saying, okay, I'm eating protein now. On the outside of those bacteria are enzymes that will take a big protein, a big casein molecule, and they will break it down small enough so they can get it inside their cell. They can't digest or they can't metabolize anything outside. So the first thing is they break those proteins down small enough they can get them inside and break them down further into parts they can use. What that does is start to soften the cheese itself. So now it's starting to work on that texture. It goes from a rubbery to a more supple kind of feel. And they also start to shape flavor, but in kind of a lesser way than what's coming up. So they're definitely making small enough pieces that we can taste and that we can smell, but they're not making them in super massive quantities. We're just beginning. So we're usually just getting into texture territory at this point. This breakdown of proteins is called proteolysis, and that means breaking down proteins. And in cheese, it means taking these great big casein molecules of protein. We're going to break those down into smaller peptides, and we're going to the bacteria is going to break those smaller peptides into amino acids, and those get broken down into smaller things. So from amino acid down is where we can start to taste and smell the aromas that are familiar to us in the cheese. So proteolysis matters because it's changing texture now. The cheese is becoming less rubbery or less firm because of those proteins breakdowns. It's more mellow and supple. We're getting flavor changes. We're starting to get savory notes, buttery notes, and aged character. And this is all happening in the first few weeks of aging. So acidification has essentially stopped, and now we are in proteolysis, which is breaking down proteins into the flavors that we all love. Another part of that is lipolysis, which is the breakdown of fats. And this, in some cultures, contribute a lot to lipolysis and some not so much. The breakdown of fats into fatty acids can give us some buttery notes, some nutty notes, piquant notes, and aromas. Lipolysis matters more in some cheeses than others. In some styles of cheese, it's a really small part of it, and in others, it really matters a lot. So even after lactose is mostly depleted, cultures still matter because they have enzyme systems in place, they have already started protein breakdown, and they continue interacting with the cheese matrix in a way that it affects ripening. The third stage is autolysis. So as cheese ages, the conditions in the cheese become much harsher for the bacteria. They start, the pH is low, salt is present, moisture is lower, it's all stressors, and the bacteria start to die. As they die, the outer membrane of the bacteria lyses or breaks down, and the contents of those bacteria are dumped out into the surrounding paste. Why this matters is most of that content is enzymes. And so these enzymes that we're just systematically breaking parts of the protein that we're bringing into the bacteria are now loose in the cheese. This is where you really get a kind of a wave of new flavor that happens. These enzymes don't care if they're working for a live bacteria or they're working for you and I. All they care about is seeing a protein. They see a part of that protein chain that they're designed to cut. They go up and cut it. It doesn't matter. They're not getting anything out of it. It's just they're a machine, a tool, and they're going to keep working. As these enzymes break things down, they still break those proteins down to smaller parts, then to amino acids, and then to things that we can taste and smell. So this is a major reason that cheese keeps aging for weeks and months and even years, is this enzyme production in the cells that have leaked into the cheese. You also get enzyme production from rinds, but we'll get into that another time. We're just talking about kind of what's going on inside a semi-hard cheese. So aging is not mainly about bacteria making huge amounts of acid. It's about enzymes that are already present in the cheese, including enzymes released from dead or dying bacteria. So the big myth is aged cheese gets sharp because it's getting more acidic, and that's usually not the case. It's not becoming more acidic, it's becoming more chemically and structurally complex. So, and just to summarize, cheese cultures influence cheese in 3 stages: acidification, enzymes while they're alive, and enzymes while they're dead. And this different bacteria make different enzymes, and that's why texture, aroma, and flavor is different between different kinds of cheeses. So I know this was a long one. Thanks for sticking with me to the end if you did, and I hope you have a great day. We will go into more of this on the next video.